Sarah Chappell
Yeah.
from Euronews.
Yeah, Sarah, good to see you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Britain's former Prime Minister Tony Blair, now a Middle East peace mediator, has been attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. We spoke to him about the Geneva II Conference on Syria. The international peace talks are aimed at ending the Syrian Civil War.
Are you freezing?
I am.
Hopes for Geneva II talks are low. Do you expect any results at all to come out of this week?
Obviously, the situation is incredibly difficult on the ground, and the likelihood is, unless President Assad feels under real pressure to come to an agreement on the ground, then the likelihood of a solution is let's say it's going to be difficult.
How do you think the international community can help bring together two sides that are so bitterly opposed?
Over these past 6 to 9 months, I think the situation on the ground has shifted back towards the regime. They're obviously getting a huge amount of help from Iran, from Hezbollah, who are really fighting on the ground and have given them that ground force capability they lacked a couple of years ago. And therefore, I think for us in the West, what we've got to ask ourselves is how do we put the opposition in a position where they're going to be bargaining on equal terms? Now, the complicating factor, of course, is the opposition has also got elements within it that we feel deeply unhappy about. Al-Qaeda-linked groups, jihadist fighters, and so on. And so this is why the situation has now become very, very complex. But we should never forget there's probably a majority of people in Syria who want a sensible solution to this, who realise that the different religious groupings have got to live in peace together. But at the moment, they're not, they don't have the strength to make their voice count.
Do you think that the UK and other Western powers should be looking into arming the rebels? And would it even be possible when the groups are so disparate?
I think the first question for us is, are we prepared in any way at all to intervene in order to alter the balance of power on the ground? And I think we should be prepared to do that. I mean, as I say, I've argued for 2 years we should at least be trying to create a no-fly zone for, not just to give some respite to the civilian population, but to send a signal to the regime: you are not going to keep the country under your control by pulverizing the civilian population.
We hear now of more than 100,000 deaths, massive refugee crisis. Do you think the international community bears some responsibility for not stepping in so far?
I know from my time as Prime Minister how difficult these decisions are. You intervene, you get one group of problems. We've seen that in Afghanistan and in Iraq. On the other hand, you don't intervene, the situation doesn't sort itself out. And the problem is, all the time when you've got this combination of dictatorship that is prepared to use extraordinary and horrific force against the civilian population on the one side, and extremist groups sponsored either by Iran on the Shia side or groups like Al-Qaeda on the Sunni side, when you have that situation, it's going to be very, very hard and tough to take the decisions necessary in order to shape that situation. And, there is a reluctance in the West to do that. I understand the reasons for that, but the fact is, as we can see today, the consequences of non-intervention are also very serious.
Why do you think there's been this reticence in the West?
It's as simple as this. It's tough. You go into a situation where, a group like Hezbollah, they're prepared to lose scores of fighters in a day and go straight back in again and fight. So when you're up against people, and likewise, the reason why these opposition elements in the jihadist opposition elements in Syria have started to get traction on the ground is they're prepared to go and kill and die. So that makes them a tough enemy to defeat. But my only plea is, if you look across what's happening in the region right now, I think there is basically one fight going on, and that's between those people who believe in a future for the region that is open-minded, tolerant, with economies that are modern, societies that are modern, and those people who want various forms of extremism based on frankly, a wrong-headed view of religion. So that's the fight. And what I think is important for us in the West is that we're on the side of the decent people who are probably a majority, but they're not organised, and they're not the ones prepared to go and kill.
What do you think the fallout will be across the region if Syria continues to disintegrate?
I think it'll be disastrous, and I don't think it'll stop at the region. So that's why I think it's such a serious situation. It's not just countries. You can see what's happening in Iraq again now. Lebanon, obviously countries like Jordan, who are standing up to the pressure very well, but they come under enormous pressure too. But I think outside of the region, I mean, look, we've got hundreds of UK citizens who've gone and been fighting in Syria. I mean, they're UK citizens. They're going to come back. So we've got a large Muslim population in Europe. So I think, this is, it's very difficult and challenging, and I understand why the leadership today finds it tough and challenging.
I'd just like to finally touch on Iran and the UN's taking back of their invitation to Tehran to attend the Geneva II talks. President Hassan Rouhani spoke to Euronews yesterday, and he said to us that the UN's authority has been undermined by the way it's handled this. Do you agree with that? These are always very tricky diplomatic situations because the UN Secretary General obviously thought Iran was coming on one basis. They, for whatever reason, thought they were coming on another basis, and that other basis was unacceptable to the Syrian opposition. So I understand how the thing came about. I don't frankly think the issue right now is whether Iran's invited or not invited. The issue is, as I said, how do we alter the balance of power on the ground so that President Assad knows he's got to come to an agreement about a transition. So you think a diplomatic solution can be found without engagement from Iran?
Well, I think, look, Iran's engaged. So whether you do that, I mean, the reality is, it's easier to say this when you're out of office than in office, but the reality is Iran is engaged in that situation. And if there's going to be a solution, they need to get the right signals as well, and they will be receiving those signals. But what the Syrian government and the Assad government and the Iranian government will be looking at the moment is they'll be looking to see the degree of will there is on our side to make sure that this works. And that's what will be important.
Would you, on a personal level, like to have a greater role in the diplomatic efforts to help the Syrian people?
No, I think I'll leave that to the negotiators that are there right now. I mean, look, I find what's happening in Syria deeply distressing. And I think across the region, there are huge issues upon which Western interests are dramatically and profoundly engaged. But the guys who are negotiating that now, and Mr. Brahimi, by the way, who's leading this Syrian negotiation, a very, very experienced man, long experience and very skillful. So I wish him luck.
Thank you very, very much indeed,
Thank you.
Mr. Blair.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. Right.